Part 37. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 362. Boom. In just a moment, the mighty underworld energy, like a river, surged to the surroundings of the altar. The chilling meaning contained in it was enough to make any living creature or ghost tremble. The majestic underworld energy swallowed the outside of the altar like a giant beast, and even the 12 stone pillars were trembling slightly. Suppressing the pain, Yujian used the last bit of her strength. Boom! In the center of the constantly surging underworld energy, there was an eye pupil that suddenly opened in the void. The color of the eye pupil was also dark blue, as if it was extremely mysterious and weird, and could penetrate the entire underworld. And the scene in the eye pupil appeared in Yujian's eyes just like a passing cloud. The huge underworld, trillions of ghosts, and boundless territory. But all these scenes were seen in Yujian's eyes. The ghosts in the underworld who inadvertently looked up at the sky were all stunned and pale in an instant. They were horrified to find that a crack suddenly appeared in the sky. And in this crack, an eye appeared. The deep eye seemed to be able to see through everything, and it made all the ghosts feel terrified. Eye of the underworld. This eye can see the scene in any corner of the entire underworld, and only the heir of the underworld dynasty is qualified to open it. Covered with a strong sense of oppression from the king of hell, this pair of eyes is enough to terrify any ghost. Whether it is a huge city or a street alley, whether it is a noisy restaurant or a narrow room. The scene of all places in the underworld is not missed, and all are spied on by this pair of eyes. The entire underworld seems to be able to escape its spying. And when the eye of the underworld swept across the last part of the underworld, the deep blue pupil suddenly stagnated. Then, in the center of the altar, Yujian's body also trembled slightly. Actually, it's really her. Yujian's eyes were a little dull, and her expression was full of astonishment. A feeling of weakness emerged, making her somewhat unstable. The eye of the underworld consumed a lot of energy, and after scanning the entire underworld, Yujian's soul power was almost exhausted. She staggered and almost fell to the ground weakly. But Chu Qingyu's figure soon appeared, gently supporting her soul, allowing Yujian to slowly lean on the stone pillar beside her. But who is it? Have you found her? Nai Chen also hurried forward, revealing a trace of solemnity in his eyes. Yujian pursed her lips lightly, obviously hesitant and tangled. Well, it's just that I didn't expect it to be her. She is the successor of the new Men Niang, who has been guarding the Nehi Bridge in the underworld for a full 1,000 years. Men Niang. Nai Chen frowned slightly. Nehi Bridge, Menpo Soup, even if what Yujian said was slightly different from the myths he knew in Blue Star. But according to the description, it can be roughly determined that this Men Niang's position in the underworld of Lanchuan continent. I just didn't expect that as an extremely important existence that guides souls to the next life, she would actually do such a thing. Since she has stayed at the Nehi Bridge for 1,000 years, why did this Men Niang suddenly attack the underworld and Lanchuan continent at the same time? Although he could feel that there might be some changes in this, Nai Chen had no intention of showing any mercy. It has been a long time since he and the Empress left Lanchuan continent. I am afraid that it has been nearly half a month at this moment. If it is delayed for a while, the barrier of the Emperor's mausoleum may be completely broken. At that time, the corpse of the Emperor will enter Lanchuan continent, which will cause the lives of all living beings to be destroyed. More importantly, solve the chaos in the Emperor's mausoleum and eliminate Men Niang in the underworld. Completing this task will get you the reward of reaching the realm of the Emperor, but I have been waiting for a long time. Even the great emperors in the underworld cannot cross the void, but Princess, you are in charge of the entire underworld. Can you open a road to the Nehi Bridge? Time is pressing. Nai Chen looked directly at Yujian. Yujian was obviously stunned for a moment. I do have a way to use the power of space, but what do you want to do? Although I don't know much, I heard that this Men Niang was a powerful emperor before her death. Even if she guarded the Nahi bridge for thousands of years after her death, her strength after decline is probably still unfathomable. If you go, it will be very dangerous. Showing a trace of worry, Yu Qian staggered and tried to stand up, but her body could only lean against the wall weakly, obviously not wanting to tear the space to help the two of them go to the Nahi bridge. Even the dark blue crown leaned against the wall dejectedly. Don't worry, no matter how strong she is still a ghost that has experienced thousands of years of wear and tear and gradually degenerated. What's more, there are two of us, the Empress and I. However, Nai Chen's eyes were firm, and there was no sign of hesitation at all. Not only that, Yu Qian was shocked to feel that Nai Chen's hand was hovering above her arm, as if deliberately emitting a breath. When it came into contact with Nai Chen's palm, in just a moment, Yu Qian felt a burst of extremely hot burning sensation. The terrifying high temperature seemed to be enough to burn everything to ashes. What's more terrifying is that the burning feeling is mixed with a pure sacred breath, as if it has an original restraint on ghosts. Yu Qian has a special identity, and the crown on her head symbolizes the identity of the ruler of the underworld. Whether it was her strength or the dark energy that was faintly floating on her spirit body, it was far beyond the reach of ordinary ghosts. But even she felt fear in the sacred and fiery heat. Even, it seemed as if the deepest source was trembling inexplicably. What on earth is this? Yu Qian couldn't help but reveal a trace of astonishment in her eyes. She seemed to have heard of this feeling before, and even learned about it in some ancient book. But at this moment, she didn't dare to believe it easily. Is it really that? But is it really possible that the physique that hasn't appeared for thousands or even tens of thousands of years? And, it has reached such a terrifying level. Looking at Nai Chen in disbelief, Yu Qian was still completely unable to confirm the absurd idea in her heart. But she soon noticed that Nai Chen's expression did not change at all, but several faint golden lines slowly emerged on his arms. Although it was obviously not fully opened, the pale golden lines were mixed with an extremely strong aura. Solid as a rock, sacred and majestic. As it slowly flows, it seems to be enough to shock and awe all the ghosts. Finally, the words that she had never dared to imagine before emerged in Yu Qian's mind. The innate holy body that made Lanchuan continent and the underworld extremely afraid, but had not been seen for many years. Xiangu holy body. Finally, Yu Qian made up her mind and slowly raised her hand. The crown exuded a dark blue, and a crack appeared in the space in front of her. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 363. To be able to take on the position of Men Niang guarding the Nahi bridge, her strength is unfathomable. Even though she took over the position of Hades, Yu Qian had never had any intersection with her in the past 100 years. If it were anyone else, Yu Qian would never be able to open this space crack. But at this moment, facing Nai Chen and Chu Qingyu, she seemed full of trust. Others may never be able to do it, but they may really be able to reverse the situation. The imperial mausoleum of Lanchuan continent is on the verge of collapse, and the time when the underworld will be attacked for the second time is unknown. To stop this war that has caused chaos in the two worlds, perhaps, it can only be left to them. The space crack slowly opened, and the power of the underworld was used again. Yu Qian was extremely weak, and even the color of her soul began to fade. But her eyes looking at Nai Chen and Chu Qingyu were full of boundless expectations. At this moment, the scene on the other side of the space crack has slowly emerged. A vast river flows slowly, filled with endless thick fog. The clouds and mist were so thick that they could block the sight of all ghosts. They could not see the surroundings clearly, and they forgot their past lives and did not know what their afterlife was like. Above the river, there was a small bridge quietly standing. The names carved on the bridge were familiar. The river was the Wangchuan River, and the bridge was the Nahi Bridge. and by the bridge. In the dense clouds and mist, only a figure could be seen slowly. And the ghost energy that permeated through the space crack was so strong that it was enough to crush any breath that existed in the underworld so far. The faint blood was floating, and the strange bloody feeling was extremely close to that in the Imperial Mausoleum. Obviously, on the other side of this space crack was Men Niang, who was staying by the Nahi Bridge. Even if they did not reach the other side, the difficulty of this battle could be imagined. Don't worry, Sister Ming. However, even though her body was petite and thin at the moment, Chu Qingyu glanced at Nai Chen beside her, and when she looked at Yukin again, she had a confident smile. It was as if it didn't matter what kind of opponent they faced in this battle. Walking to Nai Chen's side, the two smiled at each other. Holding hands, they walked towards the space crack in front of them. How strange. Looking at the two backs, Yu Qian was stunned for a moment. She had indeed heard about the description of human emotions before. But in her cognition, those wonderful emotions were always distant and unfamiliar, and even untrustworthy. But between Nai Chen and Chu Qingyu, this emotion that she had long known showed a completely different feeling. Not only was it too sweet, but more importantly, the trust between the two was like an extremely strong bond that could never be broken. For a moment, Yu Qian's eyes were completely stagnant. Compared with her current weak physical condition, her eyes were completely attracted by the scene on the other side. Holding Chu Qingyu's hand, she stepped across the space crack. When the figure slowly emerged at the other end, Nai Chen opened his eyes. Just as described in the myth, there was a hazy white fog near the Nahi Bridge. The fog almost completely covered the scene in front of us. There was no other noise around, and only the Wangchuan River could be heard flowing quietly. In the fog, we could only barely see the outline of the Nahi Bridge in the distance. There was a dead silence all around, so quiet that it even made people feel a little weird. And finally, a figure slowly emerged. Although she was wearing a simple coarse linen shirt, the golden hairpin inserted in her bun was extremely precious at a glance. Plain clothes and straw shoes, simple and elegant. However, she was completely covered by the mist, so it was impossible to see her appearance. More importantly, the breath floating in the mist was calm, as if she was not surprised by the arrival of the two. Is this, that Men Niang? Nai Chen felt Men Niang's identity in just a moment. But this scene was obviously different from what he imagined. Anyone who is polluted by the dragon blood formation, whether it is a cultivator, a great emperor, or even a ghost, will be greatly affected. Eventually, they will evolve into a twisted appearance with a violent personality, bloodthirsty and cold-blooded. I thought that Men Niang, as the source of everything, would become even crazier, and her mind had been completely affected by the dragon blood formation. But I didn't expect that Men Niang would be completely different from what I imagined. Although her appearance could not be seen clearly, it was in her breath that I could clearly feel that she seemed to be completely unaffected by any bloodthirsty and violent influence at the moment. In this case, why would she do such a crazy thing that she even wanted to destroy Lanchuan continent and the underworld at the same time? Even Nai Chen couldn't help but fall into some doubts. Creatures from Lanchuan continent? Are you here to kill me? At this moment, Men Niang actually took the initiative to speak. Her tone was quite calm, as if she had already expected the scene to happen. Oh? You actually knew. But soon, a trace of awe appeared in Nai Chen's eyes. No matter what, she had to pay the price for turning the two worlds upside down at the same time. After all, she not only had to solve the chaos in the Imperial Mausoleum, but at this moment, Saint Fanhua and Aolan were probably still trembling and hiding behind the door. I want to see what strength this Men Niang in the underworld has that dares to attack the Emperor's mausoleum. Even though her body has become extremely petite at this moment, Chu Qingyu raised her head and looked into the mist with a cold aura that was no less imposing. I did expect you to come a long time ago, but a little girl who is powerless, a junior whose bone age is only 20 and who has not even reached the realm of the great emperor. With your strength, do you think you are qualified to defeat me? However, Men Niang's voice was obviously a bit disdainful. The dense fog began to slowly dissipate, and the face hidden in the depth slowly appeared. And when they saw her face clearly, both Nai Chen and Chu Qingyu showed a trace of astonishment at the same time. Men Niang is just a title in the underworld. Anyone who takes over the next position can become the new generation of Men Niang. Even Yu Qian is not clear about the identity of this generation of Men Niang. She only knows that she was an extremely powerful emperor in her lifetime. But when the mist dissipated and her appearance was seen clearly, the two of them instantly recognized her identity. This Men Niang guarding the Nehi Bridge turned out to be the Emperor Qiu Yan, who had seen in the Imperial Mausoleum. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 364. It's actually Emperor Qiu Yan. When she saw it clearly, even Chu Qingyu was slightly dazed. If her appearance and temperament were not almost exactly the same as those in the Imperial Mausoleum, even she would not have believed that Men Niang in front of her could actually be Emperor Qiu Yan. But it does make sense in this case. Nai Chen frowned slightly. After the battle in the Imperial Mausoleum, he had roughly understood the nature of Emperor Qiu Yan. This woman who was willing to follow her Taoist partner and give up all her cultivation and status, completely disregarded the secular perspective and was willing to sacrifice her life for what she pursued. The character of Emperor Qiu Yan is indeed worthy of admiration. After her death, a wisp of her soul remained in the Imperial Mausoleum, and her original soul entered the underworld. But, looking at Emperor Qiu Yan emerging from the clouds, his dark brown eyes were gradually covered by a layer of blood red. Nai Chen could roughly guess that during the long wait, her thoughts gradually changed. Or possessed by a demon, or even polluted. At this moment, Emperor Qiu Yan could no longer maintain a calm mind. Even the spirit body bathed in the aura of the emperor and with a hint of sacred breath was almost completely shrouded in thick blood mist. In the underworld, I have been waiting for him for too long. But no matter how hard I waited, I couldn't even find the trace of his reincarnation. I can only watch and wait here numbly. Since I can only wait for such an ending, why should I stay here? It is better to disrupt the reincarnation order of Lanchuan continent and the underworld. Maybe on the broken and chaotic road of reincarnation, I will really have a chance to see him again. Walking out of the mist, the blood color in Emperor Qiu Yan's eyes has become increasingly rich, even completely filled. Even the tone of his speech is a bit crazy. That feeling is even more chilling than the polluted residual soul in her Imperial Mausoleum. Guarding the one he loves for thousands of years is indeed admirable. Nai Chen also knew that the deeply possessed Emperor Qiu Yan had no chance of being saved. Since he had done something, he had to pay the price for it. The golden light and charm of the Xiangu saint body slowly emanated, and it was obvious that Nai Chen had already had the intention to kill. As long as I overturn the laws of the two worlds and smash all the reincarnation order into pieces, I might be able to find him. No one can stop me, not to mention that you are just two juniors. A scarlet blood light flashed in Emperor Qiu Yan's eyes, and he was obviously eroded by the sense of killing. Once a powerful emperor, he stood at the top of Lanchuan continent. At this moment, she, who had already been possessed by the devil, did not hide her arrogance at all. Junior? Then do you think that this emperor is worthy of fighting with you? But at this moment, a cold voice came from the other end. Chu Qingyu raised her head and looked straight at Emperor Qiu Yan. Although her petite body looked quite weak, her delicate face was even softer, as if she was just an innocent little girl. But both her voice and her eyes without any hesitation carried a completely different power from her body. As cold and arrogant as ice, it was enough to make people feel awe. At this time, Nai Chen also bent down and inserted the snow lotus that he had taken from Chu Qingyu's head back into her soft hair. Suddenly, an extremely cold air spread around. The degree of coldness was far beyond imagination. In just a moment, the clouds floating around were condensed directly in the extremely low temperature. What was floating in the air was no longer the fog that blocked the vision, but crystal clear and extremely cold frost. Ling Ran's mighty power of the emperor burst out, and that powerful might was the breath that could only be exuded by an existence that had reached the peak of the cauldron transformation realm and stood at the top of the emperor. Enshrouded in the light, Chu Qingyu's figure slowly grew larger, and finally transformed into that graceful and flawless figure again. The light blue phoenix skirt fluttered gently with the cold air, and a trace of indifference appeared on the beautiful and flawless face. Even though she knew that Emperor Chu Yan's nature was not like this, at this moment, Chu Qingyu had no intention of holding back. Especially when facing an emperor, even if the opponent's physical body was dead and his strength was greatly reduced, he had to go all out. In the sky, a golden bell floated in the air. Although the pendulum did not shake, it was as steady as Mount Tai, which was awe-inspiring. The golden light spread and suppressed the surroundings, and in the faint, it seemed that there was a terrifying power that made people feel suffocated. In addition to the Emperor Bell, which even made the great emperors of Lanchuan continent feel awed, a Dharma image also appeared behind Chu Qingyu. It was a green bamboo sword. There was no extra decoration on the sword body, but only the blade was extremely sharp, dotted with faint ink marks. The Dharma image formed by a sword was enough to prove that Chu Qingyu's character was as sharp and unparalleled as this sword, and she was decisive in killing. Anyone who blocked the way ahead would be killed. Anyone who offended the power of the emperor would be killed. This was the great emperor, the supreme existence who had been proud of the Lanchuan continent for thousands of years and ruled the four directions. Even though she was facing an emperor who had only existed in ancient times and reached the realm of calamity, Chu Qingyu's cold eyes did not show any fear. With the first ring of the emperor bell, she drew her sword without hesitation. The sword light shot up into the sky. The green bamboo sword dotted with ink marks seemed to have no superfluous decorations of any powerful magic weapon, but it seemed to be the sharpest weapon in the world, enough to cut off everything that blocked the way. The ringing bell drifted around, and the powerful voice was like the roar of a lion. There was obviously a very thick fog blocking Emperor Chu Yan, but when the emperor bell rang, it was like a lingering Buddhist sound, and the fog instantly retreated to the surroundings as if encountering a great enemy. The sky was open and the earth was vast. All the obstacles in front of them had long disappeared, leaving only the soul of Emperor Chu Yan exposed in the air. This sword tore the air in front of him, and even the unbreakable space in the underworld was shaking under its power. The earth shook, and the air wailed in the grinding sound. However, Emperor Chu Yan seemed to ignore the terrifying sword and raised his hand to the sky. However, in her blood-red eyes, she noticed another figure. This is. For some reason, the sacred golden light that slowly emerged from Nai Chen made her stunned for a long time, and her eyes revealed a trace of astonishment that could not be concealed. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 365. The azure sword light was extremely sharp, tearing the space apart directly. The biting cold wind it brought made people feel as cold as falling into an ice cave. The imperial power was mighty and fierce. Although this sword was simple and unadorned, just a sword energy, it seemed to have the power to sweep across everything. Even the space in front of him was torn apart by it, but Emperor Chu Yan seemed to have no regard for it and just raised his arm. Just above her, a red string appeared in the air. But this string, which looked extremely thin, collided with the sword effortlessly. Boom! The aftermath of the strong explosion drifted around, and even the surface of the forgetful river was shaken by a wave of aftermath. But this sword was blocked, and it could even be considered effortless. Even though Chu Qingyu did not use too much power in the previous sword, even the great emperors on the Lanchuan continent could hardly block her sword so easily. It is obvious that even if the body is destroyed, the strength that Emperor Qiu Yan has retained is still extremely terrifying. More importantly, the faint blood-red light emanating from her eyes seems to be increasing her strength invisibly. Nai Chen took a step forward and stood shoulder to shoulder with Chu Qingyu, but he seemed to have no sense of the critical situation at all. Instead, he smiled slightly. "Wife, let your husband help you." Chu Qingyu, who finally recovered her body, couldn't help but pout her lips slightly and looked at Nai Chen with resentment. The battles of the great emperors have always liked to be alone, and there has never been anyone in Lanchuan continent who is qualified to fight side by side with Chu Qingyu. But even when facing Emperor Qiu Yan, for some reason, when Nai Chen walked to Chu Qingyu's side, she couldn't help but feel a little relieved. Humph. In this case, then this emperor will give you a chance to defeat her together like last time in the Imperial Mausoleum. Chu Qingyu raised her head slightly at a 30-degree angle, as if she didn't care. But Nai Chen was already familiar with that arrogant and coquettish expression. "Well, I will reluctantly help you then." With a teasing smile, Nai Chen stood beside Chu Qingyu. When they faced Emperor Qiu Yan, the momentum of the two changed at the same time. The emperor bell rang again, and Chu Qingyu held the hilt of the sword and remained silent for a long time. But when the sword was slashed, the awe-inspiring aura burst out in an instant. At this moment, the virtual image of the bamboo sword behind Chu Qingyu suddenly increased several times. And the sword energy that was slashed out rose from the ground, as if it could penetrate the sky and reach the sky. Wherever it was slashed, all obstacles would be cut in half. The majestic emperor bell rang in the sky, and it actually added a layer of golden light to the sword energy. Crossing the space, this sword, blessed by the emperor bell, burst out with a momentum that was several times more magnificent than before. Nai Chen also attacked at the same time. The golden giant's Dharma image emerged, like a high mountain, suppressing down. The sacred and majestic aura exuded by the golden sun all over the sky phantom covering the surface even made Emperor Qiu Yan's eyes slightly widen. Chu Qingyu's strength is indeed strong, and it is even difficult for her to believe that there is still a great emperor with such strength hidden in Lanchuan continent. But compared with him, Nai Chen made her more afraid. Even though his strength is slightly inferior to that of Empress Qingyu, the sacred aura that burst out when Nai Chen raised his palm actually has a restraint on ghosts from the source. The hot and scorching golden light like the rising sun actually made her feel the trembling of fear in the depths of her soul. Strange, what is it? Emperor Qiu Yan's eyes flashed with a clear and unbelievable look, but soon, a deeper blood light enveloped her eyes. The bloody smell emanating from her body made her look even more furious and violent. With just this little ability, you want to trap me? The last trace of consciousness seemed to be almost swallowed up. At this moment, Emperor Qiu Yan was almost completely swallowed up by desire. All she wanted was to completely break the reincarnation order of Lanchuan continent and the underworld. For this reason, she didn't even care about making any crazy moves. This time, 7 strings appeared in the air at the same time. The 7 strings emitted 7 colors of light at the same time, and the majestic spiritual power was covered with a faint blood light. It was this strange blood red that caused the power on the 7 strings to surge in a completely different way. After the death of the body, only one soul remained. Over the years, Emperor Qiu Yan's strength has gradually declined. But it was with the help of the dragon blood array that she was able to exert nearly half of her strength in her lifetime. Even when facing Chu Qingyu, who was at the top of the emperor's strength, she still seemed to be at ease. Emperor Qiu Yan's eyes were filled with bloodshot anger, and the 7 strings of the zither shone brightly. The golden Dharma image and the bamboo sword energy, 2 majestic auras, came at the same time like a surging wave. But when they hit the strings, it was like hitting an indestructible barrier. Even though the 7 strings trembled under the strong impact, they still completely withstood the 2 attacks. Moreover, the blood color on the strings was so bright that it seemed to have a faint tendency to counter-attack upwards. The 7 strings were originally heavenly magic weapons refined by Emperor Chu Yan. As the spiritual objects born from heaven and earth, they are full of holy aura. The 7 strings have 7 colors of light, which makes people feel awe. But at this moment, the originally brilliant 7 colors on the strings are almost completely covered by rich blood red. As if struggling, these 7 strings, which were originally regarded as sacred heavenly magic weapons, are twisting in the air like earthworms. Under the cover of blood light, they look extremely hideous and ugly, and they are completely different from the appearance recorded in the legends of Lanchuan continent. Just relying on you 2 juniors, you also want to defeat me? Empress Qingyu and your strange physique, it seems that you are just like this. As if the last few remaining wisps of consciousness have been almost devoured, Emperor Chu Yan's angry roar has completely lost the calm and elegant maintenance at the end. Whether it is the bloodthirsty eyes or the voice, there is chilling hysteria. Her eyes were already dyed scarlet, and the look she gave Nai Chen and Chu Qingyu was clearly filled with greed and killing, wanting to kill them completely right here. But just as the 7 strings twisted ferociously under her control, Emperor Chu Yan suddenly noticed that Nai Chen and Chu Qingyu didn't seem to care about the failure of the attack. Instead, they looked at each other in the gap between the scattered waves of air, and even seemed to have a smile full of trust. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 366. Since they were able to defeat the first time, they would be able to do the same the second time. Even though the strength displayed by Emperor Chu Yan was extremely powerful, the 2 of them clearly did not feel the slightest fear. On the contrary, facing a powerful opponent seemed to arouse Chu Qingyu's competitive spirit. The sharp light in his eyes seemed to pierce through Emperor Chu Yan. A cold air emerged, and finally, the 3rd sound of the Emperor's bell rang. This sound of the Emperor's bell was extremely deep, like the dark clouds that covered the sky and pressed down from the sky when the storm was about to come. The strong and frightening sense of oppression even affected the scene in the underworld. The sky seemed a little gloomy, and the wind suddenly rose and fell. The calm surface of the Wangchuan River was drifting and surging as if it was frightened. The huge waves were stronger than the waves, beating towards the shore like a raging beast. Even the Nahi Bridge was slightly shaken by the waves. The terrifying oppressive feeling of the 3rd Emperor bell was enough to make all ghosts feel awed. The Emperor bell rang 3 times. All Lanchuan continent, when hearing the 3rd Emperor bell, even the great Emperor would have been defeated. And at this moment, even Emperor Chu Yan's blood-red eyes showed a trace of astonishment. Obviously, he did not expect that the Emperor Realm Cultivator, whom he did not take seriously at all, would burst out with such powerful strength. But in addition to this, there was another thing that surprised her even more. "Wife, leave your 3rd sword to me." At this moment, as Nai Chen whispered in Chu Qingyu's ear, the huge golden Dharma image slowly stretched out its giant palm in the air. "What do you mean?" After a moment of hesitation, Chu Qingyu instantly understood what Nai Chen meant by watching the actions of the golden Dharma image. "Interesting, if that's the case, then give it a try." A cold smile appeared at the corner of her mouth, and the imperial power on Chu Qingyu suddenly rose a whole section. The awe-inspiring power even made the surrounding ground gradually frozen under this bone-chilling cold. The bamboo sword behind him trembled and made a threatening sound, and the black bamboo sword in Chu Qingyu's hand also shone brightly at this moment. Suddenly, a sword was slashed out. But the majestic sword energy of the sword turned into the shape of a sword, and it did not go in the direction of Emperor Chu Yan. Instead, it flew into the air and flew towards the golden Dharma image. "Listen to my command, hold the sword." As Nai Chen's voice fell, the golden Dharma image actually stretched out a huge palm and directly grabbed the sword-shaped sword energy slashed by Chu Qingyu in his hand. The sword energy burst out with a majestic and murderous might, which was fused with the majestic majesty of the golden Dharma image. The sacred golden light and the emerald green sword energy of the bamboo sword shone in the sky, majestic and majestic, as if the power of God had descended to the world, majestic and sacred. The golden Dharma image holding the sword not only restrains the ghosts from their origin, but also integrates Chu Qingyu's imperial power and swordsmanship. The mysterious and murderous sword intent in the bamboo sword swirls up and merges with Nichien's sword intent. The already extremely dazzling golden Dharma image actually bursts out with a more dazzling and sacred light. In those eyes, there is even more majesty, as if a divine weapon has descended to the world. When he raised his palm, it seemed as if mountains and rivers were pouring down. The light reflected, as if the sky and the sun were broken. Kai Tai sword. Accompanied by various mysterious visions, the golden Dharma image held the sword and slashed. This sword actually burst out with a strength that is even far greater than Chu Qingyu. Above the imperial power. This sword seems to be enough to shake the underworld and shock all the ghosts. Cut the sky and tear the earth apart. Boom. The boundless and huge pressure came down with this sword. Even Emperor Qiu Yan's already polluted scarlet eyes revealed a trace of astonishment and fear. The seven strings were a heavenly grade magic weapon that gathered countless spiritual energy from heaven and earth, forged by a great weapon refiner, and forged after countless reinforcements. The power of the strings once caused bloody storms in Lanchuan continent, and even the top sects were afraid of it. But at this moment, despite the blessing of the blood light, the seven strings trembled violently, as if struck by a thunderbolt from the sky. Even a heavenly grade magic weapon could not withstand this terrifying power. Bang! Finally, the first red string broke. As an extremely powerful heavenly grade magic weapon, it broke without any dignity. The remaining 6 strings struggled to support, but the amplitude of the shaking and trembling had begun to become more and more intense. The 6 taut strings wailed in pain, and seemed to be on the verge of their limit. How is it possible? At this moment, Emperor Qiu Yan, who was originally arrogant and thought that no one could defeat him, could not help but be filled with astonishment. She had never imagined that this combined attack would actually form an effect of 1 + 1 far greater than 3, and it erupted with a terrifying force that was simply unimaginable. Not only that, the sacred and mighty golden light mixed in the sword energy had actually caused her spiritual body to gradually show signs of cracking. This restraint on ghosts from the source, even the soul of the emperor could not avoid it. She could only notice in horror that part of her soul had begun to become like charcoal after being burned by fire, becoming dark and scattered, and was about to be annihilated by it. Impossible, no one can stop me. I must disrupt the order of the 2 worlds and find him again. As if he had fallen into a bit of madness, the red light in Emperor Qiu Yan's eyes began to become disordered and crazy. Raising her palms towards the sky, she seemed to want to do her best to resist the overwhelming killing intent. The only 6 remaining strings trembled more and more violently, as if all the strength had been mobilized. But even so, it still couldn't stop the sword slashed down by the golden Dharma. The emerald green sword light was so sharp that it seemed to be enough to tear everything apart. The 6 trembling strings finally couldn't resist any more, and with a bang sound, they broke in unison and were swept away by the whistling wind. The violent sword intent swept over and instantly engulfed Emperor Qiu Yan. Like millions of blades slashing down, her spirit body was constantly disappearing at a speed visible to the naked eye. But for some reason, at this moment, the original madness of Emperor Qiu Yan suddenly disappeared. The eyes filled with blood and madness also returned to clarity at this moment. Through the golden light and sword energy in the sky, she saw clearly. At this moment, Nichian and Chu Qingyu had already appeared, in their hands a guqin and a bamboo flute. The sound of the string music was ethereal and graceful, and the lingering sound was lingering. At this moment, Emperor Qiu Yan, who had been swallowed by desire and fell into madness for a long time, inadvertently, A smile of relief appeared at the corner of his mouth. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 367. The extremely powerful sword energy tore through space, passed by the Nahi Bridge, and cut into the Wangchuan River. The boundless Wangchuan River was actually cut into a crack that stretched for an unknown distance. The water waves dispersed in two directions, gradually raising huge waves. Even the river of unknown length was cut in the middle. It was enough to see how terrifying the power of this sword was. The 7 strings of the zither had been completely broken and swallowed by the sword energy. Emperor Qiuyan clearly saw his disappearing soul. But as the blood in her eyes disappeared, her originally hateful eyes gradually became peaceful. Looking at Nai Chen and Chu Qingyu, who were playing the zither and holding the flute at this moment, a faint smile even appeared at the corner of her mouth. Part of the consciousness of the remnant soul was transmitted to Emperor Qiuyan's memory, which made her recall the scene in the Imperial Mausoleum. She knew very well that she had been completely defeated. At this moment, the sound of the piano and the flute did not seem to be for her to completely annihilate herself. Rather, it seemed to be a parting gift from the two of them. If it were not for this beautiful sound, she might not be able to recover her mind until her soul was gone, and could only perish in the chaos of violence and killing. But it was these two voices that successfully awakened her. The soul gradually disappeared as it turned into dots of light, but Emperor Qiuyan's blood-red eyes had returned to clarity. Looking at the two figures of Nai Chen and Chu Qingyu, a satisfied smile appeared at the corners of her mouth. Because she clearly saw that whether they were fighting side by side or playing the flute and the piano, the sincere and pure friendship between the two of them would always connect each other in a subtle way. She had experienced this feeling before, but it was fleeting, so short that it was even difficult for people to recall it. Emperor Qiuyan only vaguely remembered the day she died for love. Even though no one in the world could understand, she was willing to die generously. After her soul drifted to the underworld, she did not have any regrets. She just learned that her Taoist partner had already stepped into the reincarnation path and went back to the next life. After getting the news, Emperor Qiuyan was extremely sad and lamented that he was a step slower. But later, he quickly let it go. In order to wait for her lover, she even chose to replace Meng Niang, who distributed the forgetfulness soup to the ghosts on the Nahi Bridge, to guard here. Because Emperor Qiuyan believed very much that as long as he stayed here firmly, he would be able to wait for him one day. However, the reality was not as beautiful as imagined. Emperor Qiuyan stayed here and watched countless ghosts go back to the next life. But 10 years passed, 100 years passed, and 1,000 years passed, but she still couldn't wait for the person she wanted to see. Perhaps he has entered reincarnation in the underworld of another world, or perhaps he has cultivated himself to become a great emperor, with a lifespan of 10,000 years, and even, a wife and children. But no matter what, Emperor Qiuyan could never see him again. During this 1,000-year wait, Emperor Qiuyan's ideas finally changed gradually. She was no longer as calm as before, and began to doubt whether she could really wait for that day. She even began to become a little anxious and irritable. Emperor Qiuyan, who had the power of an emperor during his lifetime, did not completely lose control due to the influence of emotions. Until that day. On the Forgotten River, Emperor Qiuyan picked up the red blood bead. He was shocked to find that in it, there was something that had been passed down since ancient times and was once feared by countless cultivators, the dragon blood formation. The ancient dragon blood formation, which was condensed with the blood of real dragons and countless strange formations, was obviously an extremely evil thing. She originally just wanted to completely seal the dragon blood formation so that it would never see the light of day again. But before the seal, she felt the powerful reversal force in the dragon blood formation, and realized that if she used this strange formation, she might be able to find a chance. Originally, Emperor Qiuyan did not really intend to carry out this absurd idea, but he could carry the blood bead containing the dragon blood formation with him. But under the influence and pollution of day and night, her soul was gradually eroded and began to become violent and bloodthirsty. Finally, the desire spread completely. Emperor Qiuyan's consciousness has been completely controlled, and he began to implement the absurd idea regardless of the consequences, slaughtering countless lives and disrupting the order of the two worlds. If it weren't for the chord music floating in the air, I'm afraid I would never wake up. Looking at the Wangchuan River, Emperor Qiuyan smiled bitterly, with a sense of vicissitudes in his eyes. I am afraid that my wish will never come true, but fortunately, before the moment of annihilation, I still have a chance to take a look at the thing that I once desired the most. Wife, I always feel that your flute-playing skills have improved again. After the song was over, Nai Chen looked at Chu Qingyu and teased. He, of course, after all, I have practiced many times. Wait. Chu Qingyu, who had just smiled triumphantly, suddenly paused, and then, her cheeks flushed, and she pointed at Nai Chen tremblingly. I mean to play this bamboo flute, not that. Don't misunderstand, what are you thinking about? Huh. Nai Chen was obviously stunned for a moment, and suddenly reacted. Do you know the other meaning of playing the flute? No, I don't know. You can't blame me for this. You always repeat these two words strangely, which makes me curious and go to the library to check it out. It turns out that this word actually has another meaning. And, it's a shameful meaning. Damn it, it turns out that I have been kept in the dark by you. Thinking back to the words she said before when she didn't know the truth, Chu Qingyu suddenly felt ashamed and angry. What kind of wolfish words did she say in the past? You dare to deceive me, too much. Chu Qingyu, who was so ashamed and angry, couldn't help chasing Nai Chen, and even dared not look directly at the bamboo flute in her hand. Wife, spare me, we are still on the Nahi Bridge, so you should wait until we return to the bedroom before you start. Don't even think about it. Although Nai Chen tried to quibble, Chu Qingyu, with a blushing face, had already chased after him with the bamboo flute. That posture was quite a bit of domestic violence meaning. Laughter, shouting, and pitiful complaints echoed along the Nahi Bridge. Looking at the two figures, Emperor Qiuyan finally showed a gratified smile. The slowly disappearing body also said the last two words. Thank you. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 368. As the voice of Emperor Qiuyan floated out, Nai Chen, who was playing sweetly with Chu Qingyu, stopped. Both eyes looked at the dissipating soul at the same time. The last ensemble was actually proposed by Chu Qingyu, so that Emperor Qiuyan could stay sober for the last time before his soul flew away. Being able to die for love and wait for 1,000 years by the Nahi Bridge, Emperor Qiuyan's spirit and perseverance are indeed worthy of admiration. It's a pity that she still couldn't resist the temptation from the abyss of desire. Looking at the figure with a smile, watching the soul becoming increasingly faint and about to completely disappear between heaven and earth, Chu Qingyu gently clasped her fists. Thank you for your guidance in the Imperial Mausoleum. Have a good journey. I hope your sins can be redeemed. It's a pity that a generation of emperors fell here, and even before the moment of soul flying away, it was difficult to maintain a clear consciousness. Well, thank you. However, hearing what Chu Qingyu said, Emperor Qiuyan seemed to have dropped the last heavy stone in his heart. The soul was scattered, and she could not have an afterlife. The suffering she caused was doomed to be irreparable. But in this last moment, she felt very safe. A tear fell from the corner of her eyes, and Emperor Qiuyan seemed to have slowly closed his eyes with satisfaction. and the soul that had been shrouded in light finally couldn't hold on, accompanied by a breeze of the waves. The last soul dissipated with the wind and completely disappeared between heaven and earth. The Huangchuan River still flowed quietly, but the soul that had guarded here for thousands of years had completely returned to annihilation. It seemed that there was no fluctuation and destruction of spiritual energy, and the surrounding fog slowly emerged again. Both the Huangchuan River and the Nehi Bridge were shrouded in white fog, leaving only a vague shadow. The environment became very calm. Except for the huge sword marks cut off on the shore and countless crushed sand and dust, it seemed that there was no sign that a battle between emperors had just occurred here. Finally solved, this way, the riots in Lanchuan continent should also stop. Even Chu Qingyu, who was as calm as ever, couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. I have been in the underworld for so long, and I have been bullied by Nai Chen a lot. Now the source has finally been solved. After all, I can't stay in a place where I can turn into a child at any time for a long time. Otherwise, if a ghost in the underworld accidentally drinks Menpo soup and the concentration is not enough, I will remember the scene of being bullied by Nai Chen as a little girl. When he happens to reincarnate in Lanchuan continent again, won't my face as the empress be completely lost? No, I must not allow this to happen. Thinking of this, Chu Qingyu hurriedly took a step back and covered the snow lotus on her head, as if she was afraid that Nai Chen would suddenly snatch it away. This sudden scene made Nai Chen a little stunned. "Wife, what are you doing?" "Oh, so that's how it is." Looking at Chu Qingyu's resentful eyes and the way she worriedly protected the snow lotus on her head, Nai Chen instantly understood the situation. But his interest was aroused instead. "Wife, it's rare to come to the underworld, why don't I help you pick the snow lotus and experience the feeling of childhood again?" "Impossible." Unexpectedly, Nai Chen was really going to attack her right after the battle. Chu Qingyu hurriedly took a step back to protect the snow lotus. But Nai Chen continued to approach, as if he was completely aiming at the snow lotus. For a moment, Chu Qingyu showed a trace of panic, anxiously thinking about how to escape from Nai Chen's clutches. But at this moment, she suddenly felt something strange happening to Nai Chen. "Ding, congratulations to the host for successfully annihilating the soul of Emperor Qiu Yan and resolving the impending catastrophe in the underworld and the Imperial Mausoleum. Obtain system reward, the host is about to be promoted to the Waiting Realm, the realm of the Emperor." As the system voice suddenly sounded in his mind, Nai Chen couldn't help but reveal a hint of excitement in his eyes. The realm of the Emperor. At this moment, he had waited too long. Although it was indeed very terrifying to reach the Pahai realm within a year, only by reaching the realm of the Emperor could one truly enter the hall of the top powerhouses in Lanchuan continent. Because only the powerhouses in the Emperor realm could stand proudly on Lanchuan continent. The gully between these two realms is extremely deep and difficult to cross. Even with the power enhanced by the Xiangu Saint body, it is difficult to cross it. But at this moment, as the system voice fell, Nai Chen suddenly felt that there seemed to be a huge change in his spiritual sea. When in the Pahai realm, the spiritual sea that was originally only a small lake continued to expand, and even became as vast as the sea. But at this moment, the entire spiritual sea began to boil. The waves surged, and the pure spiritual energy seemed to be rushing towards the center, and slowly gathered towards the only point that seemed like the void. As the spiritual sea gathered, Nai Chen felt as if his limbs were moistened by the endless spiritual energy, and he felt very comfortable. Not only that, all the pores on his body seemed to open up, as if they could fully communicate with the surrounding space. The purest spiritual energy in the air turned into a faint golden light, rushing into Nai Chen's body. The speed of these golden lights surged faster and faster, and in the end, they even surged into Nai Chen's body like a wave. Turned into a surging river, flowing through his body. Nai Chen's whole body seemed to be filled with extremely rich spiritual energy. It seemed as if there was an extremely solid barrier blocking the great emperor's realm. Facing this barrier, from ancient times to the present, countless Tianjiao Chuxiu and powerful cultivators have been blocked in front of it. No matter how powerful they were in the past, no matter how high their talents were, when facing this barrier, most people could only stop helplessly. The seemingly thin barrier seemed indestructible, blocking the lifelong dreams of countless cultivators. This made the great emperor's realm, which was enough to look down on the Lanchuan continent, unattainable. Most cultivators could only look up and look at it throughout their lives, without any possibility of breakthrough. But at this moment, the surging spiritual energy in Nichien's body was completely different. It was magnificent, like the spiritual energy of a surging river constantly gathering, and it actually condensed into an extremely sharp blade. The pure and bright blade exuded a strong golden light. Even facing the barrier in front, it pierced forward without any hindrance. Inch after inch. Every inch forward seemed extremely difficult. But with a hint of awe in Nichien's eyes, the blade seemed to burst out with strong power again. The surging spiritual energy gathered and condensed in one place. Crack. The last barrier was shattered with a bang. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 369. The realm of the great emperor was once the realm that countless cultivators dreamed of. But just above this threshold, countless sons of the proud could only die with hatred and could never cross it. But at this moment, as the golden blade condensed by countless spiritual energy pierced the barrier, this threshold that had been blocking Nichien for a long time was finally crossed. Countless spiritual energy suddenly rushed towards Nichien's body like a surging wave. A large amount of spiritual energy was extremely fast, and when it gathered into Nichien's body, it seemed to reach saturation. Suddenly, it seemed to have reached the peak of the limit of endurance. Nichien's bones made a sound like popping beans, and the blood flowing in his body seemed to be dyed with sacred gold. All the scenes were enough to explain the extraordinariness of this moment. After a short period of silence, there was an extremely huge explosion. Boom! The endless spiritual energy turned into a strong aftermath, sweeping around violently. The grass and trees beside the Nahi bridge instantly shook and trembled in the aftermath, almost being completely uprooted. It was enough to see what kind of power was contained in this aftermath. The river surface raised some ripples, and the spiritual power that had just spread out lingered between the heaven and earth. The golden light was shining, and it was even carrying a bit of holy fragrance. At this moment, the layer of golden light covering Nichien's body gradually shrank. However, the aura on his body was completely different from before. A majestic power of the emperor floated around invisibly. The faint golden light on his body had not completely dissipated, and Nichien stood in the same place, but he had a completely different aura from before. Obviously just standing there, not even moving. But at first glance, he stood like a statue of a god, exuding a majestic and powerful aura. Between his eyebrows and eyes, there was enough to make anyone feel awe, and even a feeling of wanting to crawl at his feet and bow down. This is the realm of the great emperor. His actions can make the heaven and earth tremble and make all living beings submit. What is even more terrifying is that the imperial power that is faintly floating on Nichien's body is far from that of a person who has just been promoted to the realm of the great emperor. His terrifying power is like a lion that is ready to strike, and it is even better than those great emperors who have reached the waiting realm for a long time. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully breaking through to the waiting realm, the realm of the great emperor. Accompanied by the system's prompt sound, Nichien couldn't help but look at his body. A faint golden light covered his skin. At this moment, his limbs, body, and even every pore in his body seemed to be able to communicate with the heaven and earth. More importantly, it was like a surging wave submerged under the lake. The power in his body seemed to be able to turn into a surging wave at any time and surge out. The original spiritual sea in the Baha'i realm was as vast as the sea. But at this moment, the spiritual sea had long disappeared. All that was left was the vast and infinite void like the universe. Even though the law of space cannot be used in the underworld, Nai Chen can still feel his connection with space. Crossing the void and tearing the space are abilities that only the great emperors can possess. This means that he has truly reached the waiting realm and can be honored as a great emperor. I have been waiting for this moment for a long time. Even Nai Chen could hardly hide his joy. After arriving at Lanchuan continent, although his cultivation level rose rapidly, he had stayed in the Pahai realm for a long time. But today, he finally broke through the limit and reached the realm of the great emperor. That is, standing at the top that thousands of cultivators on Lanchuan continent look up to. But compared to these, Nai Chen looked at Chu Qingyu with a subtle smile on his lips, thinking of something more important. Except for taking the 9-yang chaos pill twice, he had always been holding onto the wall when entering and leaving the Empress's bedroom. Even though he was a man who was unwilling to admit that he was not good enough, he could not escape being bullied by the Empress. But now, this situation is finally coming to an end. Chu Qingyu's current cultivation is at the peak of the waiting realm, and there is still some distance in terms of realm. But although she was able to bully the crying Empress in 300 rounds, it would be no problem to regain the confidence she had lost in 1 or 2 hours of fighting. You actually reached the waiting realm. The mysterious aura of the promotion to the waiting realm floated around, and the strange scene just now was already in Chu Qingyu's sight. Nai Chen's speed of improving his cultivation is indeed very fast, and it has even completely exceeded the cognition of many cultivators in Lanchuan continent. But even knowing this situation, Chu Qingyu never thought that Nai Chen would actually break through to the waiting realm in the underworld. It was really too sudden. If I remember correctly, when Nai Chen first arrived at Tianyun Palace, he was only at the Zuyuan realm, and was even sealed by the elders of the sect. It took less than a year to break through the realm of the emperor. The son of destiny, the seedling of the heavenly pride, there is no shortage of such existence in the long history of Lanchuan continent. But reaching the realm of the great emperor in 1 year is unheard of and unseen even in ancient times, let alone today. After all, even if someone can reach such a realm in 100 years, there are hardly more than one handful of them throughout the history of the continent. Moreover, each of them has been a supreme powerhouse who has dominated the world and even shocked other spiritual realms. At this moment, although her face looked calm and even a little cold, Chu Qingyu couldn't help but feel a little happy in her heart. Sure enough, what Nai Chen did was always beyond people's cognition. With some complicated thoughts, her clear autumn eyes looked at Nai Chen inadvertently. But when she noticed Nai Chen's subtle smile, Chu Qingyu was suddenly stunned. This smile, could it be? In an instant, Chu Qingyu suddenly realized that something was wrong. It was indeed a good thing that Nai Chen was promoted to the realm of the great emperor. But, looking back, every time I laughed at Nai Qingsu, he would threaten that when he reached the realm of waiting, he would make sure that he would not have good juice to eat. But at that time, I thought about how difficult it was to cross the realm of the great emperor, so I didn't take it to heart at all, but mocked him more triumphantly. I even deliberately lifted my clothes on the bed, revealing my snow-white shoulders, and teased Nai Chen who was already unable to get up. After all, at that time, even if Nai Chen wanted to, he didn't have any extra energy at all, and she even mercilessly teased him as young master with kidney deficiency. But now, thinking of the 3 long hours in Shanghai, Chu Qingyu's beautiful cheeks turned pale in an instant. Looking at Nai Chen, she couldn't help but take a step back like a frightened little rabbit. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 370. Thinking of Nai Chen's possible thoughts at this moment, Chu Qingyu couldn't help but blush on her cheeks, and she stepped back in panic. But maybe it was because the three swords just consumed a lot of energy, and he happened to trip over a large stone behind him. As a majestic empress, Chu Qingyu was unable to balance her body and fell down. However, beside the bridge there are flowers but no leaves. The blooming flower is brilliant red, like a burning flame. She fell into the flowers, and the soft petals caught her delicate body, as soft as lying in a marshmallow. The blooming flowers and the mist are so beautiful that the scenery here is heartwarming. At this moment, Chu Qingyu suddenly noticed that Nai Chen also slowly leaned down. You can't escape the first grade of junior high school, but you can't escape the 15th grade. Wife, do you think you can escape? Countless flowers from the other side surround that beautiful body. The fiery red flowers were like fire, and the delicate body in the light blue phoenix skirt was as cold as ice. The two complement each other, creating a completely different sense of beauty, and even Nai Chen's eyes can't help but be completely attracted. Hey, this is the underworld after all. At least wait until we get back to the palace. Chu Qingyu's voice was obviously a bit coquettish, but it inadvertently became softer and quieter. I don't know if it's because of some mistake, or because my brain fell into chaos and I didn't think about it. As Nai Chen slowly approached, his slender waist straightened slightly, and his soft cherry lips unconsciously moved upward to meet her. Perhaps it was influenced by the vast white mist and the beautiful scenery of flowers on the other side of the world, but I was still worried about Nai Chen reaching the realm of the great emperor just now. But at this moment, that trace of panic seemed to be completely forgotten. Before his eyes, the two figures in the flowers were slowly getting closer to each other. But at this moment, a somewhat embarrassed voice could not help but sound. You actually want to do something shameful on the other side of the flower beside the Nahi Bridge? Wow, you guys are a bit wild. Sister Ming. In just a moment, Chu Qingyu showed a hint of surprise, then quickly sat up and smoothed her messy hair. The already slightly red cheeks had turned completely red with embarrassment. But even though Chu Qingyu put her legs together and sat on the ground obediently as quickly as possible. Obviously, the scene just now cannot be explained at all. It's over, woo-woo. Her cheeks were so red and hot that they seemed to be steaming. Chu Qingyu put her hands together and lightly covered her cheeks, her eyes closed slightly in shame. During the period when Tianyun Palace prohibited its disciples from having romantic relationships, she often caught those disciples who secretly fell in love or even engaged in small tricks. But I never thought about the cycle of cause and effect and the way of heaven reincarnation. He was the one who caught those disciples before, but now, he was caught instead. Moreover, Sister Ming saw them lying on the other side of the flowers and kissing each other. At this moment, Chu Qingyu wanted to hide in a crack in the ground and hide herself from others. Ahem, did I come too late? Looking at the scene in front of her, Yu Qian couldn't help but cough twice in embarrassment. She sensed the strong aftermath of Nai Chen's promotion to the realm of the great emperor, and finally recovered the strength of his spiritual body, so she wanted to come and take a look. But I didn't expect it at all. What a coincidence, we just happened to run into such a scene. Is there something wrong, princess? After sorting out his emotions, Nai Chen couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. Embarrassment meets embarrassment, and the air seems to have stopped flowing. Fortunately, Yukin responded shamelessly. Haha, it's nothing. I just came here because I felt my breath had recovered and my body happened to be restored. I didn't expect to catch up. A wisp of breath flowed along Yukin's crown, but her eyes quickly couldn't help but change. I didn't expect Men Niang to be dead. Every Menyang has made great contributions in the underworld, sacrificing himself for others and giving a lot. Yu Qian couldn't help but sigh, but soon a smile appeared on the corner of her mouth, and she looked at the two of them generously. Thank you for eradicating Men Niang and saving the Netherworld dynasty and its building from collapse. Come with me, thousands of Yin soldiers and people in the Netherworld dynasty are waiting to express their gratitude to you. Saying that, Yujian raised her hand, and a crack was torn in the unbreakable space Bible. On the other side of the space is the Netherworld dynasty. Then let's go, wife. Nai Chen looked rather elegantly toward Chu Qingyu, who was sitting like a duck in the grass with her legs together, still a little shy. Chu Qingyu nodded slightly and gently placed her soft hand on Nai Chen's hand. With a slight exertion, Nai Chen stood up. Yu Jian walked in front, and the two of them crossed the space and returned to the Netherworld dynasty. The majestic city walls are towering and carved with countless powerful beasts. The huge territory and millions of Yin soldiers all illustrate how powerful the Netherworld dynasty is. But after experiencing this entire month of catastrophe, the Netherworld dynasty had obviously suffered heavy losses. The dilapidated walls and ruins have not yet been repaired, and the blazing fire has not yet been extinguished. On the battlefield, the ground was burned as dark as coke, and the armor dumped on the ground was enough to show how many invisible places there were. Those Yin soldiers sacrificed their lives as victims of this war. Sensing three figures emerging in the space, almost all the Yin soldiers looked over at the same time. At the same time, they suddenly realized that the blood-red haze that had been shrouding the sky for a whole month had dissipated at this moment. The roars and wails that had been floating from time to time, as well as the strange aura that rushed into the underworld, also completely disappeared at this moment. The lingering sense of terror seemed to disappear at the moment they appeared. The source of the chaos in the underworld has been killed. In just a moment, all the ghost soldiers instantly understood the cause and effect. But they were all shocked to get this conclusion. Could it be that the princess did it? Countless eyes gathered towards Yu Jian at the same time. But it was clearly seen that Yu Jian smiled and shook her head, looking at Chu Qingyu and Nai Chen. It turned out to be them. The ghost soldiers were a little shocked. But soon, the millions of ghost soldiers showed gratitude at the same time. He stroked his lower body solemnly and respectfully, and bowed deeply in the direction of Nai Chen and Chu Qingyu. Thank you both. Congratulations to the host for receiving the admiration of millions of ghost soldiers, a doll said. The system voice suddenly sounded. At this moment, Yu Jian also looked at the two with a smile. Thank you for saving the Netherworld dynasty. Although it is not precious, before you go back, how about I give you a gift to express my feelings? Oh? What gift? Although they have known each other for a short time, Nai Chen is very clear that Yu Jian is obviously not the kind of vulgar person who only gives gifts of natural materials and treasures, and he can't help but ask with some curiosity. A trip to the haunted house. Yu Jian replied with a slight smile. Shock, the love letter was sent to the empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 371. Haunted House Tour? What is that? Chu Qingyu was obviously slightly stunned. She didn't expect Yu Jian's thank you gift to be such a strange thing. After all, she had never heard of a haunted house before. Why would you go to a house full of ghosts when you are alive and well? Ahem, this may not be what you imagine. Noticing Chu Qingyu's slightly curious expression, Yu Jian explained. In fact, this haunted house is said to exist in Lanchuan continent. The function of a haunted house is to deepen the intimacy between some couples through shock and fear. For this reason, there are even many Taoists who specialize in using talismans to create illusions, or summon real ghosts to scare passing couples in a haunted house. This is the underworld. Not only did I build ghosts, but in terms of realism, they are far better than them. It sounds a bit weird. After hearing this explanation, Chu Qingyu still couldn't understand it. How can a normal person deepen his feelings by seeing ghosts? Besides, ghosts, are they scary? However, although the empress did not understand at all, Nai Chen instantly understood Yu Jian's intention. He took a step forward without hesitation. Thank you, princess. We have decided to go on this haunted house trip. While speaking, Nai Chen could not help but feel secretly happy. Unexpectedly, this princess is really smart. Compared with the cliched gold and silver banknotes, this gift is much better than I imagined. After all, I really want to imagine what it would be like for the cold and arrogant empress to tremble in fear. Not only the cultivators of Lanchuan continent, but even I have never seen it. But now, it is not necessarily the case. Nai Chen quietly raised his thumb and nodded to Yu Qian with satisfaction. Seeing Nai Chen's actions, Yu Qian also smiled knowingly and gave a look that seemed to express, "How about it, I did a good job." Only Chu Qingyu stayed there in confusion, looking left and right, but she couldn't understand the current situation at all. But soon, Yu Qian, who kept her word, walked in front of the two and led them into the Netherworld dynasty while introducing them excitedly. "After I returned to the underworld, I built a small maze in the style of some entertainment facilities for the people in Lanchuan continent. It's a pity that the maze is too monotonous and there is not much fun. Although I tried to open the haunted house for a while, I put it aside because not many ghosts were interested. It was your arrival that made me think of the original plan again. This haunted house is perfect for you. I'll give you a chance to play as a gift. Of course, if you like it, you are welcome to play as many times as you want." Yu Qian walked in front, and a huge house approaching in the distance seemed to be the maze she built. "This emperor has no interest in haunted houses, or we should go back to Lanchuan continent first." Chu Qingyu looked at Nai Chen. "After all, it has been a full half-month since I left Lanchuan continent." Although Sister Ming's kindness was hard to refuse, her gift was really a bit weird. Haunted houses, no matter how I think about it, it feels like there is no fun at all. Nai Chen couldn't help but smile slightly. Chu Qingyu has lived in Tianyun Palace for a long time, ignoring worldly affairs, so naturally she couldn't know what a haunted house is. However, this is also a great opportunity to bully the Empress. How could I give up such a good opportunity? Don't worry, my wife, the matter of the Imperial Mausoleum has been resolved. Anyway, I'm going back soon, so what's wrong with staying in the underworld for a while before that? Besides, this haunted house is actually much more fun than you think." Nai Chen quickly persuaded. "Really, will it be fun?" Chu Qingyu was obviously a little skeptical. After all, just hearing the word haunted house, she really couldn't feel any fun in it. However, it is very difficult to travel between the two worlds. Since we have arrived in the underworld and dealt with Emperor Qiu Yan, it would be fine to stay for a while to have a honeymoon or something. With a little doubt, Chu Qingyu had to agree. After all, even if there are really ghosts, it is absolutely impossible for a great emperor like me to be afraid. Following Yu Qian, the two finally arrived in front of a slightly larger building. This building stands in an open area, and its size is enough to catch up with more than a dozen houses. It is enough to see that it can accommodate a large space. Not only that, the whole building is pitch black, the heavy roof covers everything, and the irregular walls block all the light outside. There are many hideous and terrifying patterns engraved on the dark walls, and even quite scary ghosts are specially painted. Even in the underworld, it looks quite deep and terrifying. Then I'll go in first. You wait outside for a while. When the gate reopens, the haunted house will be open to you. You are welcome to come and play at any time. It's just a small thank you for saving the Netherworld dynasty." Yu Qian turned around and gave a reminder, and then quickly entered the haunted house. The spirit body sank into the building, and in the darkness, Yu Qian sighed comfortably. The period of time on the way to Lanchuan continent had a great impact on her. After returning, Yu Qian built this huge house as a maze for the ghosts who wanted to come and play. After all, the maze is relatively monotonous and soon lost its fun. Yu Qian also thought about reopening the haunted house mode. But this is the underworld, how could the ghost soldiers and ghosts be afraid of their own kind? Therefore, This originally very good plan was soon shelved, and only some props that had been used were left here. Yu Qian floated into the depths and whispered. All ghosts listen to my orders, put on prop costumes immediately, and put away the props I placed here before. The haunted house is rebuilt, now give me full preparations, and do everything you can to scare the two people who are about to come in. Although the haunted house plan has been stopped for a long time, the ghosts in the house immediately took action when the princess' voice fell, and they were all ready. Some wore long hair, some hid in the sets, and some drilled into the wall. The entire haunted house was being rebuilt in an orderly manner. Nai Chen, I have tried my best to help you. You must seize the opportunity. Paying attention to the situation in the haunted house, Yu Qian couldn't help but smile. Under her command, almost all the ghosts were ready soon. And with Yu Qian gently waving her hand in the distance. In front of Nai Chen and Chu Qingyu, the door of the haunted house has slowly opened.